Hello and welcome to episode 372 of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club. I have just woken up. It's Thursday morning. It's the morning after the night before, and I'm delighted to welcome from the terrace Mr. Craig Fowler. How are you?
I'm good, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome. It's normally a point in Paisley and not much to talk about. It's the opposite, apart from the point. There's plenty to talk about. And you know what? I don't know what it's like with you when you wake up. If the first thing you do is you go for your phone or whatever. Maybe it's different over here on this side of the pond, simply because I wake up 4 or 5 hours. It's 4 hours this week. 5 hours normally behind the UK, and there's usually a loads of messages or whatever. So I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see your first tweet about. Look, we're going to go straight to it. The goal that wasn't, and maybe should have been, but wasn't given. Nothing like chronological order and setting things up and team news and everything. Fuck it. We're going straight to your tweet and your comment. It wasn't just one tweet, it was a kind of succession of them. Give us the gist of what you said about the disallowed St Mirren goal, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, so I know I'm very much in the minority in this, and I've even seen most Hearts fans say they think it's an absolute nonsense decision. And I think there's a nonsense element to it, but we'll get to that in a second, because I don't think the decision to disallow the goal is necessarily wrong. Now, I can imagine everybody listening to this is like, what? Like, so hear me out. So it's not a foul, but it's not given for a foul. It's not given for a push. It's not given for a pull. It's given because Mark O'Hara is offside when the free kick is taken. And he definitely, as you can see from the angle behind the goal, which was shown on Sports Scene, he makes a movement into Lawrence Shankland. Shankland, there is slight contact made. Shankland then has to go around him to try and get into the 6 yard box or the penalty box and to try and track runners for the free kick. That's why it's given. It's given because he's interfering with play. He's in an offside position and he's interfering with play. The nonsense element of it and why I think the goal should have stood in general, I don't think it's necessarily a wrong decision, but I don't think it should have been disallowed, is because it's still a bit too murky. Like, would Shankland have got there? Was there enough from O'Hara to say he was hugely interfering with play? You can make an argument that he wasn't really doing much at all. Yeah, would Shankland have even got there to influence what happened afterwards with St Mirren scoring? I don't think so. And it's just this terrible version of VAR we have in Scotland, where we've got like if you compare it to the kind of bigger leagues, we've got the fewest cameras, poor poor quality cameras at that compared to some of what you see in the English Premier League, for instance. And yet we seem to get involved in decisions. It feels like more than any other football you watch. It's so pernickety, and it's a kind of thing that St Mirren have been doing all season, and they've done it away to Hibs. They've done it successfully away to Hibs. When Miguel Freckleton scored in that game, I think to make it 2-1 to St Mirren, I think that was right. During that build up, it was a similar thing. In that instance, it was Jonah Yunga was offside. He didn't make any motion to go to the ball. Instead, he moved across and blocked off Jack Iredale, who was the closest defender to Freckleton. That was looked at by VAR. It was looked at for quite a time because they were also looking at Alex Gogic, who kind of ran across the path of the ball, and whether that was interfering. Ultimately, deemed that was fine, and it was not the same VAR, but the same referee as last night. And then last night they decide, oh no, that should actually be disallowed. So I don't think it's not a terrible decision because had they caught it at the time, you could look at it and go, yeah, that's actually right. He's offside. He's interfering with play. But these kind of things happen so often, and it's just they seem to pick and choose when they decide to intervene, and they do it far too often in Scottish football. They never seem to really kind of consider, is it a clear and obvious error? They just go, oh, I think that's a foul, so therefore you
Yeah.
should give it as one.
Yeah, let's try and clear a couple of things up. One, why does the referee go across to the monitor? He goes across to the monitor because it's a subjective offside. Now, back when VAR was introduced, we kind of thought offside's offside, it's black and white. It's not now. That's to do with the actual player. If there's other players involved in potentially doing what O'Hara has done, then it becomes a subjective offside, and that
Yeah.
is why the referee goes over to the monitor. Now, I commentate on La Liga every week over here for ESPN. Last weekend, Atletico Madrid against Osasuna. We had something similar. I say similar, but it's not exact because there's a definite foul by a player in an offside position. It's Antoine Griezmann who's blocking an Osasuna player. And it's a case of the subjectivity comes as to whether or not that player he blocked might have a chance of getting to the player who scores the goal. And I think that was a fair shout to disallow that goal. If you get a chance, have a look for Atletico Madrid offside goal against Osasuna. But
Okay.
it's a clear foul by Antoine Griezmann from an offside position, which then makes him active. So I've got no issue with that goal being chalked off. And the more the Atleti fans saw of it, the more they realised, yeah, probably. And if it was against us, we would want that chalked off as well. We have maroon tinted spectacles on, and we would have been really pissed off if this had been the other way. Yes, there is some contact, and I totally get what you're saying. Your tweet read as follows: it isn't a foul, and you're perfectly correct, but you can certainly call it interfering with play from an offside position. O'Hara moves to block Shankland, who has to go around him as a result. That's the interference. If you're a St Mirren or Hibs, when you're looking at a goal that was given earlier this season, you're rightly frustrated with the lack of consistency. And then you put a picture up. This was at Easter Road earlier in the season. Now, Junga, number 11, looks offside and doesn't go to the ball. Instead, he blocks off Iredale, the closest man to Freckleton, who scores goal given. I've gone down a rabbit hole. You continue with this, and I'm simply in awe of how many times St Mirren have used this tactic
Oh,
at
it's
set
brilliant.
pieces this season, isn't it?
It's
Fair
brilliant.
play, a lovely bit of gamesmanship.
So I've had a look on Y Scout because I'm going to write about this for the Herald tomorrow. And on Y Scout, there was 30 instances this season in league games of what they called attacking free kicks that weren't direct. And so 30 of them this season, St Mirren have done a tactic similar to this on 14 of those 30 occasions. And that's not including a couple where I can't tell because the camera's like zoomed in on the player taking the free kick, so I can't see if anybody's offside. I can't see what kind of goes on from there. But yeah, in at least 14 out of 30 occasions, they've done it. And it's interesting to see if they continue doing it after last night because while everybody's thinking it's a ridiculous decision, the referees will obviously now be a bit more aware of it. And so I wonder whether they park it for a while and then maybe bring it out at some point when everybody's forgotten about this.
Well, just it's like an NBA pick and roll in
Yeah.
basketball. If you're going to do it and you get away with it, fine. But just make sure the player that's doing it is not in an offside position. Just be aware of surroundings. I'd have no issue if Hearts tried to do this as well. We're not trying to justify why the goal was chalked off. I don't think it should have been chalked off because I don't think that the what's the best way? The physicality between O'Hara and Shankland was enough. It's a football move.
Mm.
And I agree totally with what you were saying about VAR getting involved in too much in Scottish football. Now, if Scottish football had full bells and whistles VAR, if Scottish football had professional referees, professional VARs that do this 24/7, then you can look and say, we have every single angled covered. We have in Scottish football a situation whereby at Motherwell against Celtic a couple of years ago, one camera was doing two things. Keep an eye on the dugouts, but also keep an eye on offsides as well. The time that that camera is looking at the dugouts is the time it's needed for an offside call. So they have to use one at the other end of the field. That's what the mess that VAR is in right now in Scottish football. It's not made the experience any better. It's made it 100 times worse. Now, we're not going to get rid of it as much as we would all love to do so. And look, this might affect Hearts in different ways. We've seen VAR used to Hearts' advantage. We've seen VAR used and it's killed Hearts. Willie Collum's going to keep saying it's fine. We'll get better. We'll learn from mistakes. But where do we go from here to appease a footballing public who right now are watching games in record numbers but are getting really pissed off at this?
How do you appease the fans in this? I don't know. I just don't think. I'm you. I don't think it's. I think it's terrible. I hate it. I've always hated it in general, and because for the reasons that, well, last night when Kabori scored, I couldn't. Initially, I thought it was offside. I thought it was offside immediately. I was down that end of the Simon stand. I thought McEntee was offside, and so I initially didn't celebrate anyway. But I was looking for the linesman, So I thought, well, the linesman
Of
will have a
course.
better idea than me. And then I saw the linesman running back to the halfway line after a couple of seconds where I just couldn't quite clock him because he was over the far side. And then I started to celebrate, but half-heartedly, like not the way you would celebrate
Sure.
a late minute, sorry, a late minute, a late winner in the manner you normally would, because I still thought I think this is going to get chalked off, and it's just happening in every it's happening in every game now, pretty much. Where I'm thinking if it's a big game, I don't quite lose the run of myself as much as I would because there's just something at the back of my mind thinking you never know. Even goals where you're like you've got a pretty good idea, you never know if there's somebody at the back post who shoved a defender or something, and that's deemed to be a foul. But that's VAR in general. That's VAR throughout football. I've hated it ever since it came into English football, German football, like kind of around about COVID time. But in Scottish football, it's not working at all. It's a bastardized version of it. It's not fit for purpose at all. It was supposed like the whole point in it is it's supposed to get more decisions right, but in football it's too subjective and you can't do that. And all it's done is led to a country that was already far too obsessed in its media coverage with refereeing decisions every week. And the Twitter sphere is constantly going on about refereeing decisions and how they benefit one team and how they benefit another team. And it's just made it worse. It's turned it up to 11. So,
Yeah.
but is it ever going to leave? What can they ever really do? I don't know how much more they can do. Like the
You admit
VAR.
defeat if you get rid of it now, don't you?
Yeah, well, it's not even that. I think the majority of clubs would be happy to get rid of it, but now I would imagine that they would have to vote it out with the same voting structure, which would be 11-1. And I just
Yep.
think for Celtic and Rangers, the money involved in VAR is pocket money. Basically, it's nothing. So they're just going to keep saying, "Oh no, we'll just keep it." It's still getting what 6% of decisions more correct per season or something like ridiculously low like that. They'll
We
think
just
that's
want our officials to be better. I mean
well,
that
what
that
would be better? Well, the first thing to do then is make them full time, as opposed to
well they
having part time people in charge of all this.
so the assistant on the far side, as we were looking from the TV, Hearts fans to their left, that should be called. Now, if you're full time or you're part time or whatever, that's a decision. Yes, it's frantic, but McEntee is clearly offside. That flag should go up.
That,
So we're in a situation now. Do you want the errors back in Scottish football without VAR and accept them? And remember as well, with the old firm, there are 6 cameras at every game used, except games involving the old firm that aren't on television, and there are 8 because Rangers and Celtic pay for the extra 2 cameras to give better angles. And then Sky can have anything from 12 up to 25, 30, depending on the coverage of their game. It's still budget VAR. The bottom line is the decision should be better from the referee and the assistant. That St Mirren goal would not have been chalked off without VAR. That goal by Kabori in the end, would it have been chalked off? Well, here's the interesting thing. It might have been 3-1 at the time.
yeah, but
That's
also
the thing.
it might have, it might not, it might have been chalked off because there's so many times where I think officials, and again it goes back to the fact that it's not their
Over
full.
reliance on VAR.
Aye, it's not their full time job. So they've got that technology there. They have to make a big decision. Ah well, I'm not 100% sure, so I'll just let VAR tell me whether I'm right or not. And people can criticize them for it, and yeah, they should be doing better. They should be making their own decisions, and then VAR can kind of correct them if it is supposedly a clear and obvious error. But I do have sympathy for them, where it's just like I say, make them full time rather than to skip ahead to go from because obviously like England for years had part-time officials, then made them all full-time, and then had VAR. For us to skip that step, I just think is ridiculous. And it's also meant that you've taken, I mean, I don't think anybody would claim that any of our officials are good, but it's taken better officials off the field and put them into a room.
Yes.
And that's meant that there's been more referees coming up, and fans in other leagues have said this as well, that the standard of refereeing has dropped because and it will, that should eventually kind of level itself out. But over recent seasons and probably over a few seasons to come, referees are getting promoted to levels above their standard. And it's because we've had to take referees off the field and put them in a wee room.
That was quite the digression. That was like going via Inverness to Paisley. So let's get to the games. St Mirren 2, Hearts 2. Very entertaining game to watch. Had me on the edge of the sofa. Unchanged lineup. First thing to talk about from Hearts. We knew there would be changes during the next two games, or for the next two games, St Mirren away, Dundee at home. I expected one or two, didn't get it. It was same again. What did you think about that?
I was surprised. I didn't have a major issue with it at the time. I was a wee bit concerned, but my main thinking was we're going to change it up because we're playing 3 games in 6 days. But the much easier game on paper is Dundee at Tynecastle, not St Mirren away. And I also quite liked that, well, I think the Harry Milne at right midfield experiment has run its course. I did think it was the right to keep it going for the Celtic game to help to two things to help track their runner down the left. So in Celtic's case, it was Tierney. In St Mirren's case, it was Declan John. But also to be able to can naturally tuck inside because he's left-footed, and to help out Cammy and Benny with the battle in the middle of the park. So I felt it was. I understood why they were going from it, but I did wonder whether after the Celtic game and the physical exertion, and you saw towards the end of that game, Kingsley and Kisaridis both picking up knocks, like Devlin having run as he always does, like 100 miles during the game, and I did wonder whether not just kind of physical fatigue, but also mental fatigue off the
Hmm.
back of such a huge game. And yeah, maybe in hindsight, a couple of changes probably would have been better, but I'm not going to criticise McInnes for it because I didn't really have a problem with it at the time.
So, what did we see in the first half prior to Lundalu's opening goal? I think we saw something a little bit different, and I wonder if it's something they've worked on. Benny and his positioning and his eagerness to get further forward. And he's got this really good chance that he should score, to be honest. But he doesn't. But for me, it was just it was listening to the noise over the kind of first few weeks of the season. Benny gets the cry of shoot from the Hearts fans every time he's got the ball, and not having that goal threat from the kind of the two in the middle of the park. That was noticeable to me. I didn't think it was a bad start. I thought it was the start you expect when you go to St Mirren. But Benny getting forward and the press, the high intensity that we saw for most of the game against Celtic was back. What did you see in the first 20 odd minutes before Lundaloo scored that wonderful overhead kick for the opening goal?
So I thought in the first 20 minutes, and the first half in general, to be honest, I didn't think it was necessarily a great performance. I thought defensively we looked a little bit suspect. I wasn't quite happy with how we were playing in the midfield. I thought we could have done better. Like kind of passes, touches were going a wee bit kind of astray more than they have in most games this season. But I was still heartened by the fact that we looked dangerous in the final third. Every time we managed to get it in and around St Mirren's area, we seemed to have a pop at goal. Braga had a couple that he maybe could have done a bit better. I'm just going to hit him right at the goalkeeper. And obviously, you're right as well in saying that Benny should have done better with that opportunity. But yeah, I was quite heartened. And I understand the kind of Benny thing and pushing him out of the two further forward. It's funny because they both kind of got their uses in that area. Like, Devlin's got his kind of chaos factor and how much running he does. And you think he'd be perfect for somebody that would be that box to box midfielder and go beyond the forwards. Only problem is whenever he gets into those positions, he doesn't really know what to do with it. He can't really you can't really trust him to pick out an incisive pass. You can't really trust him to keep his composure in the final third, both in terms of passing, like for a like even if he has to cut it back or whatever, and also shooting. The guy just can't really do it. He only really scores from deflections or as we saw
Hmm.
with his first goal at St Mirren from 2 yards out. Benny's similar in that you can never really trust him to score. Again, I think one of his few goals for Hearts came from like about 2 inches out. But Benny does have the ability, and you saw it a bit in the second half as well as we are pressing for a late winner. He's got the ability to beat people because he's got those kind of like snake hips where he can kind of dribble a wee bit and he can.
Snake hips. We're looking for a title for this one. I was going to go something to do with disallowed goals and VARs, but snake hips will get them listening.
Yeah, and he is a bit more incisive with his passing in the final third. I don't think he has the confidence to do both as often as he does, but and certainly in football in terms, he's still quite young. Like he obviously missed a year and for a year and a half, just about. And also, before he came to us as what about 22 and had barely played any football before then as well.
Yeah.
So he's somebody that is still very much learning the game, despite the fact he's about what 26 now, say somewhere around about that age. But he's still quite young and inexperienced in terms of playing competitive football at a high level. And so it's maybe something that McInnes wants to try and bring out of him more, like go on these runs more, try and take on more people, try and thread through passes. But again, like I said, maybe don't shoot as often. Don't listen to Hearts fans saying shoot. Give it to Kizaridis.
Then he turned 27 last month.
Right.
What is it about Heart of Midlothian Football Club when we go to Paisley, we turn average players into Pirlo?
I
I,
think you're talking
I,
about St Mirren, Steve.
what the fuck? I mean, really, Alex Gogic. I mean, he turns into prime Pirlo with that goal the last time. Excuse me. This is what happens when you're a commentator and you're shouting at Hearts at the TV. And then you've got Lundaloo, who produces a banger. There's just something. It's at that end as well. It's in front of the Hearts fans.
To be fair, Lundaloo, like, nobody really knows anything about him so far this season because he's only really kind of recently come into the team. But he was somebody that they did have high hopes for in terms of being the player to replace Toyosi Olasanya, who obviously left the club near the end of last season when he went outside the window to the MLS. And that was something that St Mirren were missing at the beginning of this campaign. They didn't really have that kind of quick player, but also kind of chaos factor forward. And I was told by St Mirren fans who had kind of were kind of close to the club and had seen wee snippets of him that he's just taking time to settle. But when he does settle, they're expecting fairly big things of him. So I think that's going to him certainly get a run in the team now. I think he played quite well at the weekend as well against United. I think he got some good reports for that performance. And yeah, I expect you'll see his name. So I imagine there'll be a lot of Hearts fans listening to this who hadn't really heard him before last night, but
Mhm.
I expect you'll see his name popping up a lot more as the season goes along.
7 minutes later, Hearts are back on level terms. One of the things, among many things that I love about Hearts this season, is if we concede, I don't, as a fan, panic, and I feel, oh, it's fine. We'll get back into this and have done for the games that we've kind of gone behind this season. I think we're now at 8 points we've taken from matches where we've fallen behind this season. Of course, the Motherwell game was the one where we were 3 goals down. That was the one thing I thought we ain't coming back from this. And then you leave that game thinking, "Fuck, we could have won that game. We should have won that game." And then you
I
think,
know.
"Yeah, you were 3-0 down. Just kind of calm your jets." So the ball comes in. Kingsley's cross. It isn't dealt with well by St Mirren. We get fortunate here. It was a poor touch by one of the St Mirren players. The ball drops straight to Lawrence Shankland. That was Shankland of old. That was not even thinking. Put the ball in the back of the net. Go and get the ball. Get back to halfway. Let's try and get ahead now. That was a proper Lawrence Shankland finish. Bit of luck, but you still got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. And it's good to see him kind of rediscovering himself because I was
Yep.
still a wee bit concerned at the start of the season where I think it was clear early on that Claudio Braga was outshining him, but McInnes had his reservations about them two as a partnership in terms of Braga wants to drop deep, and so does Shankland, and he wanted Braga to go in behind more. I think they've managed to build up that partnership, and I think they look better as a pairing. But also crucially as well, Shankland's just playing a lot better than he was at the very start of the campaign, like the first month. And it's good that he's carried over his form from the kind of the very tail end of last season after just going through for him was just a nightmare season that I'm not sure anybody will figure out exactly what happened there where he went from being what was it 32 goals 31 goals scored to whatever it was last campaign and just looked a shell of himself. And speaking about him getting the ball, I loved that at the time. I also loved as well at the full time whistle Kizaridis. Apparently Braga done the same, but Kizaridis was right in front of me, sinking to his knees and like head on the turf, like gutted that we'd
Mm.
only got a draw, which
Yeah.
shows you that there is real, even though they'll play it down in public and they should, there is real belief in this squad
100% there is.
that no, actually, we can do something special here.
Hmm.
We've got belief in ourselves, belief in each other, and a draw away to St Mirren, even after coming back from behind twice, isn't good enough.
47th minute, we got Shankland from last season. McEntee finding him in space. And I'm thinking the cutback, and it's a tap in. I think it's Braga in the middle. And he doesn't even hit the side netting.
Yeah.
And he immediately apologizes. But I thought our intent at the start of the second half, and this was about it, because After this, St Mirren then were in the ascendancy, but this was the chance for Shankland to turn things around and get his second of the night.
Yeah, aye. Well, once he kind of took a weird angle at it when he initially got in the space. He didn't head right for goal as I think he should have done, or quickly got out his feet and got a shot away. He narrowed his own angle, and then having done that, he had to pass it. He had to try and pass it. You say Braga. I also Kizaridis was coming in at the back post,
Yeah,
and
there were two of them.
he was the one that was kind of like, "What are you doing? Just pass it along the goal line, and I'll score." So yeah, just a really bad bit of decision making there.
St Mirren then started to get a grip on the game. There was a block by McEntee. That was Mandron's effort after 50 minutes. Alex Swallow doing well to tip Phillips' header over the bar. What did you make of the performance of the German last night? I thought Alex had one save in particular was absolutely outstanding. He got down low and he was able to tip it behind. A couple of his kicks still cause a bit of chaos. I think last night was probably the busiest that he's been since he came in. And I thought, especially with that one save that he made, I thought he was very good.
Yeah, I've been really impressed. I thought his debut at Ibrox he looked a wee bit shaky, but having just not long signed for the club and being dropped right into that situation, that's understandable. I think he was maybe trying too hard to make an impression as well. But ever since then, I just think he's been really. He's looked really reliable. He's got this presence about him. You can tell that the defence feels comfortable with him behind him, and this having not really had too much to do over his first three or so games. We saw against Celtic, and then we saw last night that when he's called upon to make a good stop, he is capable of doing it. And yeah, I mean that's the position that's we can't really get much Jamestown help. They don't their data doesn't really scan for goalkeepers. I've heard the reason for that is that they believe it's goalkeeping is such a position that's in the player's head, so it's hard to kind of measure things properly in terms of kind of cold hard data. But however we managed to unearth him, then it's so far looked a brilliant signing.
2-1 St Mirren, 57th minute. I'm just reading the quotes from Derek McInnes after the game, and he was frustrated with the goals that were conceded. The first goal, he felt that Hearts held their line far too deep from a free kick taken by the St Mirren goalkeeper. The second one, he said, we know that the goal we lose is such a poor goal because it's two set piece goals. We know that their goalkeeper will come up and take it. That was the first one. Second one, he's talking about not defending the box well enough on the two instances from a free kick and a corner. Obviously, Freckleton scores a third and it doesn't count. I was speaking to a few pals last night, just on our various WhatsApp chats that we have talking about Hearts games. That was I don't know if it was a worry or a concern. I felt we got bullied at times, and something we haven't really seen too much before for Craig Halkett and for Stuart Finlay. The way we struggled against their two forwards, and then when they brought on two more physical giants that came on, what can we learn from that last night with the second goal that, or the goals that they scored, and the way that we struggled to defend them? Because was it this goal that St Mirren got the second one, whereby I think there's a collision near the back line between Stuart Finlay and maybe Claudio Braga, and it's headed back into the danger area and then finished by Freckleton. It just seemed very unhearts-like.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because it probably goes back to what I was saying about maybe a fatigue in the players. But then again, if you're looking at changes before last night, you wouldn't be looking at changing your centre halves because both of them have been excellent this season. And I mean, even in today's football with the constant rotation, and that's the kind of way to win. You just kind of have to do. You can't just run your players on the ground. It's too much of a physically demanding sport in 2025 to do that. But you still don't change your centre halves unless you have to, because you want that settled pairing, you want that understanding, and it was two guys in really good form. Finlay had his poorest game in a Hearts jersey, I think, by for what I've seen, by a clear distance. I thought he was quite poor at St Mirren. Halkett wasn't as poor, but I also felt like that was one of his poorer performances this season. But he has had a very high standard across this campaign, so that's not criticising them too much. Do we rotate them for Dundee? Do we give one or two of them a breather?
I don't know if Halkett can play 3 games in a week.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And Kent not being fully back yet is a little bit of a
You could play
concern.
Steinvender.
You could. What I'm saying that though is you'd miss a wee bit of the kind of aerial dominance. So like Kent is the perfect replacement for Halkett in that sense. Of he'll challenge slash win everything in there. Not sure anybody else is quite adept at doing that. But yeah, Steinvender. I mean, it's Dundee at home. I mean, if we if we
Don't
manage to
say
lose,
this.
if we
This is
no, but
such
no, it
a
was just,
typical slip-up
no, no,
opportunity
no.
now.
I was going to say if we manage to lose that or fail to win that, it won't just be the centre halves that's the issue. So yeah, I suppose Steinvender coming in for that game. If we want to give Halkett a rest, then it still should be enough. Whether it is or not, we shall wait and see.
I think this is one that you speak to Halkett and you see how he's feeling because he's. This isn't the Craig Halkett of last season where you're concerned, oh, will he get hurt or whatever. He's come back in brilliant shape, but I don't know when the last time I'd have to look back at the League Cup. That's different with the intensity and the you're not going to be as busy in games as you have been. I mean, he was busy against Celtic, he was busy at St Mirren. So that's certainly one. We'll get on to the team for Dundee shortly. I just want to wrap up the St Mirren game. Obviously, we've gone into their disallowed goal in ample depth to start this. The equalising goal for Hearts comes in the 70th minute. So it's 7 minutes after their third goal is eventually chalked off. I don't know at which specific or precise moment it was that either they got deeper or we got better and played the game further up the pitch because there was a noticeable change, and you kind of thought, not so much it's going to be a case of when rather than if Hearts get the equaliser, but it was looking much more likely. And it's a brilliant save by Shamal George to deny Kizaridis. He gets the slightest of touch, otherwise it would have been Kizaridis' goal. But for a wee lad, he's pretty good in the air, Claudio Braga. And then, what do the kids call it? Limbs in the away end.
Yes, certainly lives in the away end. Yeah, it's going to your point about what was that case? Was it a case of us playing better than them retreating more? I do think the kind of psychology of the game, not to get too Brendan Rodgers in my terminology, but I think the psychology of the game did kind of go in our favour where we're looking at it like I said earlier, we're desperate for 3 points. We want to keep this going. We want to follow up Celtic. We don't want a after the Lord Mayor show type of result or performance. So we're desperate to keep the momentum going, keep that 8 point lead. And St Mirren, looking at Hearts, had the game played out before like the last 15 minutes or so in any other season, I think St Mirren would have shown a bit more attacking intent. I think as all of Scottish football has, I think they've kind of like subconsciously bought into the hype. They're thinking, like, this is a Hearts team at the top of the table. They are actually going for the league this season. They are desperate for the 3 points. St Mirren have been on a bit of a poor run recently. A lot of misfortune in that. I don't think they've had the results that their performances have merited, but that will be at the back of the players' minds as well. A 2-2 draw with this Hearts team. It's only dropped 2 points all season before that match. I think that kind of played into their minds, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously. But I do also think that we did play a bit better in those closing stages. I remarked on that actually leaving the game to a couple of my friends who I was with, that there was just some touches that players took and where they were just kind of really on the front foot and just like attacking. And when I say attacking the ball, I don't mean attacking it and like clearing it. I mean like kind of charging to meet the ball, taking it down first time, and then kind of charging forward with it. I felt that, and it's one of those things that maybe when we set out the same team, we maybe wanted to do from the start, is to build up an early advantage and then take players off and kind of use the momentum from Sunday and the first half, first 60 minutes of the game. But it didn't quite happen. But instead, they were able to kind of, because we only made 2 subs, they were able to kind of retain some of that energy for the closing stages. And that's when I really felt that they kind of kicked it up a gear. So I would say, to kind of answer your question, it was a bit of both.
Yeah, Derek McInnes, when he was asked about the picking the same team for the sixth game in a row, thought the team was the right team to pick. We looked at what we did against Kilmarnock a lot because it was very similar. We had some really good moments, similar to the Killie game, but what we didn't do was keep a clean sheet, and we gave St Mirren a bit too much encouragement because we didn't quite deal with their physicality, and we didn't deal with the couple of instances they scored goals from. Look, it's a tough place to go. The Twitter account Pine Bovril, Div McDonald, the St Mirren fan, posting clearly about the disallowed goal, but also said, aside from my whining about the referee and the fourth official and VAR, a few thoughts on last night. A decent point for Hearts when all is said and done. Like it or not, St Mirren away is a tough game for anyone, and indeed any points gained on the road are good ones. And that's something that Derek McInnes said afterwards as well. If Hearts win on Saturday against Dundee, 4 points from these two games, when you add in the 3 points against Celtic, that's not a bad return if you can get it. So it's about looking at it not in isolation. Yeah, we would have liked to have won. We would have loved Kabori's goal to have stood, but obviously there was an offside, correct offside decision given. They're just a horrible side to play against, and you've got to adapt to do that. It's not a dig on St Mirren. They play to their strengths. I actually thought they were better than I expected, given that they've got one of the biggest games in years, probably since that League
Mm.
Cup final against Hearts, coming up at the weekend when they face Motherwell in the League Cup
Missing
semi.
Gogic as
But
well.
missing Gogic and a couple of other suspensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Laurie was saying in commentary that's the first time Hearts have named an unchanged lineup for 6 games in a row since 86, 87. And here is that team: Smith, Kidd, Whitaker, Jordan, Berry, McDonald, Cahoon, Mackay, Clark, Black, and Foster. The run ended at 6 when Robbo came back into the team for Foster, according to Hearts standard in the next game. It's not going to be the same team on Saturday against Dundee, but Hearts now find themselves in a very good position, as Anthony Brown has posted in a tweet. George Burley was sacked after 10 league games with Hearts top of the table in October 2005. Derek McInnes has now matched his record after
Mm.
his first 10 games in charge with the same number of points, same number of goals, and a bigger cushion at the top. Let's take this in isolation. Forget everything that's gone on before. We fall asleep after the League Cup group stages. We wake up, our team has played 10 games. Hearts fans are asked, where do you think your team will be? No one is answering. Top of the table, 6 points clear of
No.
Celtic. How do we push on from this?
I think it's kind of what you alluded to there in terms of the game on Saturday. I said after Celtic, we need 7 points. We're not going to win every game this season, so a slip up is inevitable, but we can't really. We've got a tougher run coming up. And so we need to kind of take full advantage. We need to step on it, kind of try and step on the necks of Celtic as they're kind of going through what they're going through at this point in time. But I said St Mirren away is tough. And then the two Dundee teams, I said if we're going to be realistic about what we need to do to continue pushing on to stay at the top of the table, to make this last as long as it can possibly last, to possibly take it all the way. You have to start saying that it's with everything going on in Glasgow. You have to dream. Things are going to have to very much break right for Hearts for it to happen. But we're allowed to dream again this season. For that to happen, we need 7 points from those 3 games. We've only got one from our first one, but we've got two home games now. You always trust Hearts to win at Tynecastle against. Well, with this team, you trust Hearts to win at Tynecastle against anybody. You'd have to think Dundee's the one where it's like, right, both the games are kind of banana skins for different reasons. United seem to play better away from home. They also seem to play better when they are the counter-attacking team. So that will be an interesting contest. But if we can manage to win these two games, I will feel, well, I'll feel very hopeful that this is something sustainable that we can ride throughout most of the season. If we're not going to finish the pile on top, then at the very least, make it a campaign to remember, make it interesting from start to finish. And B, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Celtic drop more points.
The interesting thing is that they don't play this
Yeah.
weekend, and their game in hand will not be played until the 17th of December, and that's at Dundee United. So it gives Hearts an opportunity to go 9 points clear and better the goal difference. Rangers against Aberdeen, that's postponed as well. That won't take place until the 6th of January. So it's an opportunity for Hearts to get points on the board. Hopefully we do. If we don't, or if we only get one, does Dundee boss Stephen Presley beat his chest to celebrate?
He better bloody know.
right?
If you're lucky to get there alive, if he does.
Here's a question for you. It's the same question I asked Gary Mackay on Monday, the same question I asked Ryan McGowan and Scott McIntosh on Tuesday, and the same question on Wednesday that we asked the Hearts fans. If you were offered second place in the league for Hearts this season and a Scottish Cup win, would you take that? 53.3% of fans responded yes. 46.7% responded no. I thought this was interesting. I'll get your answer in just a second. I want to read some of the responses to this, and most of the responses are about those that voted no. Serial sock thief. God, this is the weirdest feeling, but no. Once upon a time, and every other time for me in living memory, I probably would have answered yes, but not today, just in case. We've lost cups in second place before. I could live with that, but what if this is special? We're going to Europe. It's great living for the moment and enjoying riding the HMFC roller coaster. The day I give up hope of Hearts winning the league is the day I give up my season ticket. The Gorgie Truth, seen the Scottish Cup 3 times, don't need another this season. Flippancy. If you had offered the League Cup, maybe, but this feels like our chance. Everything is slowly aligning. First place, all out for it. Going out early in the Scottish Cup this time is fine with me. Full focus. Elliot Hall, absolutely not. Ragnar, no. Twee, I thought I'd take the offer, but looking at the bigger picture and the state of them two along the MA, I am all in. Craig Fowler, what do you say?
So if you're pushing me for just a yes or no answer,
Yeah.
I would probably say yes. And for the reason in that I have faith in I've now got complete faith. I've bought into this. At the start of the season when Tony Bloom was like, I'll be surprised if we don't win one league title in 10 years. I was like, please stop saying that. That's just not, it's not going to happen and people are just going to use it to beat us with for the next decade. However, having seen the quality of players that Jamestown has unearthed, and I know that January was a bit spottier, but in the summer, and it's not just Kizaridis and Braga. Like you saw it last night, like Magnuson coming on and making a quite a good impact. Kabori, somebody who kind of was looking if anybody out of the summer signings was going to be written off as a dud. The guy that played a couple of games in the wing against St Mirren and Motherwell in the season didn't look any good and then disappeared from view. He was huge off the bench last night, and had we won it, not just in terms of him scoring the goal that was ultimately disallowed, but just like had we won it in general, he was a massive reason for that. So there's now hope he's good. We've only seen a little bit of Ajew, but he looks a really quality player as well. Like there's just it's pretty much looking now. Kurjota, not seen a lot of him, but we saw that cross in
Hmm.
the derby. Borchevic's a bit the only one that's not really had any time to show anything, but everybody else who's been signed this summer through Jamestown Athletics has looked great. And you can imagine us now selling Kizaridis next summer for like 5 million plus, and then being able to reinvest that in similar kind of gems found across Europe or farther afield. I'm buying in that a few cycles down the line, we can win a league title. It doesn't have to be this season. It's a great it's a great opportunity this season because Celtic and Rangers are both having down years, and that doesn't happen very often. But if we're managing to follow this plan and build the squad as the plan would allow it to, Hearts could end up with a team where you've got guys, the entire team is of like standards of Kizaridis. And then you're talking about a team that doesn't matter if Celtic and Rangers are having down years. You've got a team capable of beating everybody else in this league. And if things go your way and matches against them, then you could end up top of the pile, whether they are struggling or not. So yeah, my answer is still yes, I would take the cup. I think there's a couple of caveats that do need to be applied. How are we finishing second, and who are we playing in the cup final? Because we finished second by losing on the last day of the season and blowing the league title, and then we beat Queen of the South in the Scottish Cup final. Then no, I'm not interested in that deal. But you know, if it's Aberdeen, Hibs, Rangers or Celtic in the cup final, and we finish second with three, like it's done that we're definitely second with like 3 or 4 games to play, then absolutely, I'll have that.
We're tight at Scarves Around the Funnel. We don't we don't pay anybody for getting it. We do this free. We always will do it free. We don't have the money to upgrade to whatever the fuck it is on X that you need to get now to get unlimited characters. I don't have space for characters and caveats in a poll, Craig Fowler. We're Scottish. We're tight. By the way, Kabori, a chaos coordinator.
Mm.
He could be absolutely anything. Just he's going to try stuff and it's not going to come off, and he's going to try stuff and you'll be like, how did he manage that? The other thing is with Ajou, I think that was pre-planned. I think it's like when you know you're going to make a sub after an hour. I think just knowing that that game last night was going to be the way it was, and remember Magnussen came in for his debut from the start, as did Kabori at St Mirren earlier this season. I totally understand why that was done, and I'm pretty sure that Ajou starts on Saturday. Who that would be for? Either Benny or Cammy, I would imagine. You've
Ah,
got the option
oh,
for a 4-3-3 if
that,
you wanted to bring him in and drop Kingsley and play Milne at left back.
yeah,
That would might be something.
that's what I think will happen. I think he'll go to a 4-3-3 for this game. The 4-4-2's worked very well, but we just don't really have anybody to kind of fill in that right midfield spot unless you're
I
just
think you
playing with
see Steinwender in for McEntee as well and getting forward
possibly,
from the right side.
possibly as well. And yeah, I think he will. I think he will change to more a 4-3-3 going forward with Braga playing off Shankland or kind of being that, kind of having a front three similar to the front three that we saw when one of the last times where we were flying high at the top of the league, and unfortunately everything crashed around January with injuries.
Yeah.
Was when we had the front three of Kevin Kyle, Stephen Elliott, and David Templeton. I think you can.
Jeez.
I think you can very much see a front three similar to that. Not quite the same in terms of Kyle was just a huge kind of man mountain of a target man, but similar in terms of Shankland playing with his kind of back to goal a lot, and Braga buzzing around him, and then Kizaridis for the width. I think that's where we'll see a lot going forward, and then that enables you to fit Ajay into the team because I'm not sure. Well, his kind of star point is his attacking sensibilities. I'm not sure in Scottish football in his first season whether you could play him in a 4-4-2. And if you did, you'd have to play him off of one of the wings. And you know, is that
Not really what he
limit?
was brought in for. Yeah.
Aye, is it limiting too much the player that you spent £800,000 more on any other player in Hearts history?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the changes at the weekend will come. I think left back becomes Harry Milne. I think Stephen Kingsley gets a rest. I think there might be a change at centre back, but that's dependent on how Craig Halkett is feeling. I would go Steinwender instead of McEntee on the right side. I think he's got more ability to get forward. We saw in his cameo against Celtic, he was bombing forward down that right hand side. I think Ajou comes into the midfield. If we go 4-3-3, then it's just a simple Ajou comes in for Stephen Kingsley. Here's one for you. If we make a change in attack, if we introduce maybe a Kabori from the start, I don't think we will, but if we were to, which one of the three would make way? Shankland, Braga, or Kizaridis if we do make a change?
Oh, that's a very tough question. He looked knackered at the end of the Celtic game when he went off. I think he had a knock and he looked like his legs had maybe gone a bit. So I would say maybe Kizaridis just for that reason. I think against a lot of opponents, I would say Shankland against a lot of opponents because just because of how good Braga and Kizaridis is. So it's funny to say it, but I think a club captain and top goal scorer over the last 3 seasons is kind of the odd man out. I think McInnes likes him that much, but I don't think he would do. But I think you'd want somebody else with just a wee bit more pace in there. However, I wouldn't do that against Dundee because Dundee are going to
No.
sit deep. And we need
Yes.
Shankland with his ability to find just a yard in the box and to get away a shot early and to make the limited chances that come his way count. So for this weekend, I don't know if I would change any of the three
No, I wouldn't.
because,
Just if he does,
yeah,
who's the
if he
most
does,
likely?
I think it would be Kizaridis just because he is looking a bit tired.
Okay, I was looking at Dundee's lineup at Falkirk in their last game. They didn't play midweek. They played that game back in September
Hmm.
on a Saturday because they didn't want a midweek game. They wanted a Saturday game, and both teams were out the League Cup, and they won 3-2 against Livingston. They kind of played with a 3-4-3 going forward and like a 5-4-1 with Wright and Samuels pushing in at kind of fullback and Congreve and Wesley as the two wide players and Simon Murray as the lone striker. You're right. They're going to sit in deep. So I think playing three strikers or three attackers with Ajou coming from midfield against their three centre backs will keep them pegged back. Just before we go, let's take a prediction. You get the wonderful opportunity now. By the way, when Shankland equalised, I didn't want my prediction to be right, but I went with 1-1 last night, and it turned out to be 2-2. I would have loved to have been totally wrong in Kabori's late winner, But we got them right, I think, in the League Cup. We've had a couple right. I think we got the Aberdeen one right as well. That might have been Scott or whoever. What's your prediction for this one? Hearts against Dundee, Tynecastle on Saturday.
1-0. I think it's going to be horrible. I think Dundee are going to
Oh,
make life very tough for us, and it's going to be a nervy encounter. But maybe, maybe the kind of maybe it wouldn't be a worst result if it was only 1-0. The kind of result that maybe just kind of refocus. Like, it's not like I'm saying the players don't have focus or anything, but you know what I mean. Kind of refocuses everybody, lets them know how tough this is going to be, and then that would maybe be the kind of best way to prepare for then a game which on paper will be a lot tougher against United the following weekend. But yeah, I think Dundee are going to come and park the bus, and they're going to make it very difficult for us to break us down. But we will have enough quality on the park that we will eventually do it.
yeah, I'm hoping it's more similar to the Scottish Cup tie when we won 3-1 than the last time Dundee were at Tynecastle in April when Simon Murray scored back in the dark days of Heart of Midlothian. Well, I say dark days. We've had slightly darker days in the past, but compared to where we are now, those were dark days. And right now, we have an opportunity this weekend with Rangers against Celtic in the League Cup semi-final to go 9 points clear. I think there'll be goals in this one. I think Hearts will win by 2 goals to 0. I think one of the goal scorers will be Azure. I was going to go 3-1, but I think we'll keep a clean sheet. Azure to back into the side with his first start for Hearts and a debut home goal on his full debut for Azure. I think that'll happen at the weekend. Thank you so much. I know you were a late substitution for Mr. McIntosh. We totally appreciate you. Just give us a quick plug for what you've got coming up, because I know you're busy later today recording podcasts, Craig.
Yes, so I am kind of one of many members, the chief of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. You can find us on all the podcast players. It is a podcast that models itself on Scottish football, not just being about two clubs. We also do talk about Celtic and Rangers, but we give them what they're due in terms of how interesting they are at any point in time, which, ironically, now that I'm plugging it, they are actually quite interesting this season because they're both
This
absolutely
week,
toiling. Yeah, this week, this season, because they've both been making complete arses of themselves. But we also have a Patreon as well for extra content. We've basically put out 7 podcasts a week. 2 are free, and the other 5 you have to pay for. So that's patreon.com/terrace podcast. And that's how I manage to feed myself. So if you like what you hear, then please sign up for that.
I can send you gratitude. I can't send you a check. Anyway, it wouldn't work because of dollar amounts. Anyway, my thanks to Craig Fowler. Now, if you're listening to this on an audio version of the podcast, fantastic. I don't think you will be, though, because Laurie Dunsire, our wonderful host of Days Gone By, also edits this. He edits the audio version. He's moving house today. He's also got 2 young kids, and he's got a job in the health service that keeps him busy as well. So if he does get round to this, then great before the Dundee game. But right now, it's looking like YouTube is probably the only way you've been able to watch this. So thank you for your company. Scarves Around the Funnel on Instagram and YouTube. We're getting into the 19th century here at Scarves Around the Funnel. We'll see you again next week. Good luck to Hearts this weekend. Bye for now.
Cheers.